service today. The topic for today is the sacred art of listening. And sacred listening is where the goal isn't to solve or to judge, but to witness. Sacred listening is listening with the heart. I think quite a few of us in the room remember way back when life seemed to move a lot slower than it is today. You know, the milkman brought the milk into the milk box every day on the porch, and the TV had maybe 3 channels, and maybe we had rabbit ears or antenna on the roof. We got our newspaper delivered to us. Hopefully the toss was accurate and got on the porch. And we'd sit down and read the paper and drink tea or coffee. The electronic communication was a landline, and the phone was usually on the wall or on a table. And life just seemed to go very slowly. And maybe it was because I was young and it just seemed like life was moving slowly, but it sure seems, looking back on it, that it was a lot slower than it is today. And then along came pagers, and everybody hated them because in the movies the pagers would always be going off. And then the great invention, commonly called the brick, which was a cell phone. It was about this big, weighed about 8 pounds, and was the beginning of the cell phone revolution. Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, Sri Yukteswar, he predicted in his book, The Holy Science, that this phenomenon of the earth, and on the earth here speeding up, was going to be a natural progression as we moved out of the Kali Yuga into the Dwapara Yuga. And we're now in the Dwapara Yuga, early innings of it. And we can see that his thoughts and predictions on this are really coming true. That the inventions and the progress of science is just rapidly moving forward very quickly. And, you know, everything's on fast time. You know, TikTok is 8 seconds or something, and Instagram. And he said in his book that the real challenge for mankind is to keep up the spiritual growth in pace or ahead of the technological advances. Otherwise, it can get out of control. And now we have AI happening, which is like instant information on any topic we choose to plug into the search. And we're living now in a world that seems like everyone's waiting to speak instead of waiting to listen. And it doesn't take long on YouTube to see everybody wanting to speak about their topic. I think we probably always remember I think it was called the phone game, where you had a chain of people, and the first person would get a sentence like, tomorrow it's going to snow 4 inches. And then you're supposed to pass it on, whispering into the next person. And by the time you got down to the end, it was nothing like the original thing that got started on the phone game. And it's always amazed me how that happened. But we have the Bible. And the Bible, unfortunately, is kind of been a product of the phone game. I mean, it's been through several translations, and words have been changed or translated incorrectly. Passages have been taken out because it didn't fit in with church's teachings. But in the very beginning, the book of Genesis, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And when you kind of put a twist on these words, when it refers to heaven and earth, they're not talking about the jewel we sit on. It was, and it's been explained in Norm's writings. Norm, the founder of Sunburst, his book Sacred Science, which unfortunately has been out of print for a while now, but we're hopefully going to have a new printing out this year with some things added to it, and should be really, really good. But Norm explains in there how creation happened, and it's fascinating, and I don't want to get into it because it takes a while to talk about it. But basically, that light is referred to as the great spiritual sun. Comes from the smallest of all places within the context of spirit or God. And it's like the center of the center song. It's constant. Every microsecond of time, this light is pouring forth into creation. And Norm, in his experience, in his cosmic conscious experience, he saw the creation as a bubble. He was outside of the bubble, and within it was God's projections and energy and light. And that light, that first creation of light, when God said, "Let there be light," that's referred to by scientists as the Big Bang. And outward from that light went everything that we see and things we don't see. And it's sometimes a little mind-blowing, but when you sit and meditate and you start to develop a spiritual connection to the Great Spirit, things start really falling into place and making sense as to how it all works. But that light moving through the ethers creates a sound, and the sound is Om. And that sound is constant, and it can be heard in inner space. And Yogananda actually had a technique called the Om technique, where he taught how to sit in stillness and listen for the Om, how to keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper into your meditation until all the surface noise goes away and you hear below all that this consonant. And this divine light, it contains all knowledge, all cosmic truths. And Yogananda referred to it as filled with lifetrons, or particles of life force, that as we just generally go about a normal day of just walking around and breathing and everything, we're taking in these lifetrons. But when you meditate, you can increase the amount of these lifetrons you take in, and they can work on your body and healing it and expanding your consciousness, presenting solutions to you with any obstacles that you're facing. And Yogananda said, the most important teaching in yoga is to attune to that Om sound. By closing your ears and listening quietly in deep meditations, you can begin to hear that sound. It underlies everything. And we're lucky, those of us that live on this property, or maybe some of you that have property similar to this, where it's pretty quiet here. And so sitting in meditation, there aren't a lot of distractions. Traffic noise doesn't really hit us unless the wind's blowing correctly off of the highway. And but I've been in situations, I worked in LA for quite a number of years when Sunburst had a warehouse down there. And it's difficult in a populated area like that. But luckily, due to technology, there's noise-canceling headphones now. So you can wear those. Earplugs help drown out the sound. So if we sit here today and we think back on what spiritual teacher or teachers that you read or that you saw is responsible for you sitting here today. It's pretty fascinating when we go back and we look at moment by moment by moment each step we took to be here right now. And it can't help but realize that we were being guided, and Divine Spirit was, again, through this light, was transmitting energy and awakenings within us. Do not accept the status quo, but to explore inner space and come to some realizations, some spiritual realizations. These spiritual teachers, a lot of them talk about that listening is not a passive act. It's a sacred, transformative practice, one that connects us to others, to truth, and often to something beyond the self. And it can be accomplished through meditation and deep prayer. In the early years of Sunburst, we lived a communal lifestyle where we all worked for the common good of everyone, and all of our needs were taken care of by Sunburst. And during this early 70s, late 60s, there was this migration of souls on the planet who were seeking a spiritual lifestyle, something that answered their questions of who am I, why am I here, and where am I going when I leave here. So when I came in 72, Sunburst had about 65 people, and we had Sunburst Farm, which was this piece of property up above Santa Barbara. We had an office on Coda Street that served as a landing zone for people traveling through and asking questions about Sunburst. And we had a back ranch, Lemuria Ranch it was called, and it had no utilities. It was totally off the grid. It had goats and chickens back there, and several people lived back there at the time when I came. And Sunburst started experiencing, along with a lot of communities in those days, in that time, tremendous growth. And these seekers that were traveling, you'd see them on the highway just hitchhiking. You know, there used to be traffic lights on 101 in Santa Barbara. Always a line of hitchhikers at these traffic lights, trying to go either north or south, seeking something. But within a few years, probably by 75, 76, we had almost 300 people. That's how fast Sunburst grew. And we had added a property out in the Coalma Valley, which was an apple orchard. And we had a ship that we were restoring, like 180 feet long. And we were restoring that. And we had a goat camp that we had goats that their whole job was to graze the back areas, back trails of the forest and create fire breaks. So the Forest Service would hire us to go back, and we had like 2,000 of these meat goats that we would take back there, and they would just chomp away and keep the fire danger low. We had a lot going on. I moved out in 73 to the orchard, where their trees had not been pruned for 5 years. And there was about 10 of us, and all we did every day was prune. And it was chainsaws mostly, and pruning shears. And it was a rush because we had to get everything pruned before the blossoms started coming out. It was a real pump. But as these new members started flocking through Coda Street office, they had to get, moved to different pieces of property. And so the orchard got designated as the property for women and children and married couples with children. And so we quickly grew to probably 60 to 70 people living at the orchard. And Norm came out one day, and I was, at the time, was just doing irrigation. And he asked me to kind of take over the leadership of the orchard, which was a big gulp on my part. But I was called upon every day to counsel different people on different situations and topics, and I had to make sure that everybody had housing and food and clothing and medical taken care of. And I had to learn without, just by trial and error, the art of sacred listening. Learning how to open my heart when I sat down with someone to talk to them and listen with compassion. And to not try to judge or solve, but to just listen. And because there were a lot of different things that got thrown at me from different people. And it's interesting because in the years since then, I've been in several different jobs, and most of the jobs I was in a leadership position where I had to keep listening to people and talking to people. And it's been quite a journey. Teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh emphasized deep listening as an act of compassion. He taught that when you truly listen without interrupting, judging, or preparing your response, you create a space where suffering can be relieved. Listening becomes a gift you offer someone. He said, deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You listen with only one purpose, to help him or her to empty his heart. And Yogananda said, listening involves a mental attitude of receptivity. The more quiet you are, the more ready you are to listen. So there's some guidelines that I found. I wish I had back in the 70s. Guidelines for sacred listening. The first one is, as soon as you feel triggered, in other words, you maybe feel threatened by what the topic is this person's bringing up, and you feel a tightness and a defensiveness and an urge to interrupt, take a pause and take a nice slow breath and listen for the feelings behind the words the person is talking about. Listen for fear, hurt, frustration, unmet needs. And before sharing your side, reflect what you heard. Sounds like you were really frustrated. I hear that this made you feel overlooked. Don't correct them. Before sharing your side, reflect what you heard. It sounds like you're really frustrated. I hear that this made you feel overlooked. And after they feel heard, speak slowly. Stay connected to your body. Breathing slowly helps. So the 4 catchphrase words are pause, feel, reflect, and respond. And respond. Let me understand before being understood. As we start to move into our quiet time, I wanted to kind of take us through a little exercise before April does the bowls and leads us into the quiet time. First of all, let's all just sit comfortably with our backs straight and try to, the spiritual center of the body is the spiritual eye. And the spiritual eye is down from the crown, in from the bridge of the nose, and in from the temple. And in that space is the pituitary gland, which is the master gland of the body. And it's our spiritual eye, it's the Christ center. It's where you have your focus, your eyes, when you meditate. Because there's this cosmic screen that images can appear to you on, and if you're really fortunate, you start to see the light, and you can feel that light penetrating your energies, your body, and you can direct that light to different areas that you need healed. You can direct the light to re-energize yourself. You can direct the light to others and help them in their journeys. So keep the eyes, you can keep them closed by staring out through, out in front, like out in here. You keep your focus out here. You don't want to, if you try to focus here, you're going to be cross-eyed. So you look out here, and you can have your eyes closed or you can have them partially open. And keep your focus there with every breath. Just pay attention to your breath. Just notice it. I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. And shift from doing to being. Open your awareness to all the sounds around you, your breath, any restlessness in the room, distant sounds like birds or far-off voices or traffic noise. Don't label or judge them. Just let them come and go. And as you inhale, lift all that you are up to that pituitary center, that third eye. And then as you exhale, draw down that cosmic light of the spiritual sun. So let us remember, practicing the art of sacred listening, we switch from doing to being. We listen to the person, don't interrupt. If we feel triggered, we pause, take a slow breath. This will create space around our response. Don't plan on what to say next. Listen as if the person's words really matter. After the person is finished, notice the silence, the stillness. No judgment, just noticing. Your response, speak slowly and stay connected to your body. Pause, feel, reflect, respond. This will help us understand others more deeply, even if we disagree with them. Yogananda said, listening involves a mental attitude of receptivity. The quieter you are, the more ready you are to listen. Please follow along in a closing prayer. Almighty Spirit, Father, Mother Divine, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for gathering us together here today and sharing this information together. Show us how we may put this into practice each day. May your divine light continue to pour forth into our souls and body. That we might do your will, not our will. Amen.
Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path that leads to thee. To thee, that leads to thee, that leads to thee, that leads to thee. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper temple of silence guide me to the right path that leads to thee, 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 that leads to thee. thy whisper in the temple of silence. Guide me to the right.